I want to move on because a new documentary, Niall Quinn, Bootroom to Boardroom, airs on Virgin Media 2 tonight at 10:15 p.m. Have a quick look at this.
It might have been 92, maybe something like that. It was around the time Roy got in the team. I'm trying to think when Roy first got in the side. And we went out to play in a tournament. We didn't quit ourselves very well. And we went on the beer for a day and a half afterwards. And some of us were late getting back to the bus, and Jack had already gone to the airport and left Mick in charge. And Mick, as we got on the bus one by one at the head office, you know, even though he was a player, you know, how dare you? You're a disgrace. You should know better, Niall Quinn. You know, who do you think you are coming this late? You know, Ronnie Whelan, who do you think you are? You know. And then it came to Roy, and Mick just went, first trip, disgrace. And Roy just went, first touch, disgrace. And the whole bus went, oh my God, that's the most incredible comeback I've ever heard. And you were kind of rooting for him in one way. You know, we're all great friends with Mick, but it was, wow, this bloke's afraid of nothing.
Niall Quinn, Football Stories, tonight on Virgin Media 2 at 10:15. Niall, good morning to you. How are you?
Yeah, hi Jerry. All well, thank you.
This is kind of the modern day equivalent of This Is Your Life in the Big Red Book. No live audience, obviously, but at this moment, looking back, is it nice to sit back and relax and not be involved in the maelstrom of everything that's going on in world football?
Well, I keep a close eye on things, and obviously I'm working with Virgin Media, so I'm heavily involved now in the Champions League again. That's up and running, so football is still flowing, you know, from me, and I take sort of a lot of it in all the time, and I keep a close eye on how things are going. You heard the GAA there; it's the same for the FAI. Football is it's in a difficult place. We know that. We understand that the problems the FAI have had over the last couple of years, and the future is going to be hard fought, and it's a tough place to be. So I haven't walked away from that entirely. I keep a close eye on things, and you know, in doing this particular documentary or series of interviews, I'm very apprehensive to do that. But I suppose, you know, now that it was done and complete, and I look back, it's been kind of good in lockdown to look back on the length of my career in some ways. What's the word? Therapeutic, I think, is that the word I would use, that I kind of scratch my head, because a lot of the 1990 stuff was shown during lockdown, and sometimes personally I'd kind of forgotten the impact of that, and when it came back, it's kind of comforting to know that we made a bit of a difference in the country. So from start to finish, football has been very important to me, and I'm obviously rooting for football in this country to come out of its not slumber, it's anything but a slumber, but to come out of its difficult problem period that it's in right now, and I think there's good signs there.
I might talk to you about that in just a moment. Just on the making of documentaries, do you ever wish there'd been a Sunderland Till I Die being made about the time when you guys took over at Sunderland?
I'm absolutely delighted there wasn't, because it was pretty chaotic, and all you have to realise is here's a guy who'd never been in business in his life, thrust in charge of an LLC, a proper PLC, I should say, in London. I was chairman of a PLC at 40 years of age, and I'd never had another job in business before that. So that was interesting, getting to learn very quickly on the job about what running a football club was like, and having, you know, thousands and thousands of shareholders that didn't want to sell their shares to us, and having to try and broker a deal between shareholders from all over the world and ourselves in terms of the club going forward, and then all the various departments within the club trying to resurrect some form of identity within a club that had fallen pretty low. You know, that they'd just broken their own record for going down to the lowest points total ever in the Premier League. The crowd were fed up. They just made 70 or 80 redundancies before we got there. And, you know, if somebody had been around to watch the chaos that was ensuing and that, I'm not so sure I would be walking down the street, you know, sticking my chest out these days. I might be still hiding.
An incredible learning curve, right? Do you ever wish now that you get the opportunity to put that back into specifically an English football club, or is that aspect of your life completely gone?
I think it has completely gone, because I would have had a few offers to go in and help at clubs in the UK, which I didn't take up. I just felt so committed to Sunderland at the time, and I don't know whether maybe the GAA in me and my family, having put all that effort in, I was never really, I felt or I never felt the urge to say, okay, I'm good at this, I'll go and do it at another club. I had 6 years of it. It was pretty hectic stuff. I made a lot of sacrifices family-wise. I missed the important years of my children growing up. They were here in Ireland. I was getting home Saturday nights. I'd have all day Sunday on the phone. So I was of no use to them here really at all. And then I was on the red eye Monday morning first thing. I mean, I did that for 6 years, and I think come the end of it, I was tired of it. I mean, there's a number of things you'd have to consider to go back in and do something as dramatic as that. But it was easier for me to go back and do TV 2 or 3 days a week than it was to run a football club. And it's getting more difficult, as you know, notwithstanding the mad times that the pandemic has leashed upon sport. But just in general, the way football has gone, the guys at the top have a lot of the pie, have most of the pie, and it's very, very difficult to make that journey again that we did, say from Championship club and a club dispirited going nowhere to get back into the Premier League. There are clubs doing that now with billionaires in charge, spending millions upon millions to do that. So we've probably got in before the gold rush.
In terms of then all of the knowledge that you have about Irish football at the moment, are you happy to be out of that as in that formal way that you are? I mean, just from your first answer, it sounded like you're a bit like Al Pacino in Godfather 2. Just when I thought I was out, they sucked me back in. Maybe it's Godfather 3. I got my reference wrong, but you know the one.
Oh, that's fine. That's good, Ger. I like that. I would say I have a very close eye on things. I've got to know people within the FAI and around the FAI who are working hard to make the game better. I enjoyed working with them, and I stay in touch with them. I was, pleased to see some publicity today around the potential of football in Ireland getting some of the betting pie that representations have been made by the association to maybe attract more revenue from government taxes on betting, which I think are due based on the fact that so many people are betting on football. So I think there's things shifting in the right way. Probably the bit that I'd refer to the most on this would be Minister Chambers last week, or just maybe 10 days ago, letting the public know that he would be supporting the League of Ireland. That's a huge change from where they were, say, 12, 13 months ago, Ger. And I think that's a good sign that things are going the right way. There's still some more ground to be made up. Of course, there is in an association that's gone through such a traumatic period. But I think there's a unity that's starting to build within the association. I think the fires have gone down a little bit. I don't know the new CEO, but I think he's doing a very good job in absence, almost, given that nobody is meeting up and everything has been done by video cameras these days. So it's a real difficult station. The association still is in a difficult place, but I think the unity that's beginning to appear and the satisfaction the government are getting, I think it's good for me to keep an eye on that. And if there's anything I can do from just outside the camp, then I would do.
Was being inside the camp more of a challenge than you thought it would be, Niall?
I think so. Yeah, there was a lot to get right, and so many of the constituents of Irish football were flattened, and there was anger in the air. There was a number of areas that I hadn't realised that they had been hurt so much by how things had developed at the end of the Delaney era, and say when we come in, and the fear that was in the air. And I went on as many working committees as I possibly could. I think I was on about 14 at one stage. It was all in, okay, it was lockdown, so I was doing nothing else, but it was quite an intense time, and really, in a 6-7 month period that I was there, you don't get to sort of get everything sorted in that time, but what you do, you get to see what's wrong and what needed help, etc. And I think the fact that Jonathan Hill's appointment comes with no links to any particular part of the game, I think it's a good thing that will enable him to gather the game together and make it fight as one for its future. And I think that's the most important thing. I think Roy Barrett and the board, both the new incoming board members and the football people, as we call them, who make up that board, that over the next couple of years that they can find pathway that's aimed for together. You know, the association needs that, and I think there's signs that that's happening. And I wish them well. And in particular, you know, listening to the GA, they're talking about the resumption of play with them. I really hope the League of Ireland now gets itself the funding and support it needs, and that it can go and have a successful season.
When you say there was fear in the air, do you mean over job security? Do you mean over clubs potentially going bust? What was the biggest fear if you had to put your finger on it?
I think every constituent, you know, was you know, pretty upset and worried. A lot of fear in the air. So, you know, if you take League of Ireland clubs, the uncertainty there, particularly throw the pandemic in 4 or 5 weeks after we went over the line, and you can kind of see what that might have been like. And trying to bring that into a position where, you know, the league could start again. I mean, we kind of led sport in many ways, working with NFED and, you know, making sure players were tested. You know, our players were tested before any other sport. And we tried very hard to get a confidence that the league could be completed, and it took a while, and it took some convincing, you know, of various departments in sport itself, whether that's Sport Ireland, whether it's the government itself, that it could be supported, and we got the go ahead to do it. So that was good. People were worried, clubs were worried that we'd fail, but it came off okay, and it was a good start. And you know, that's the League of Ireland area for you. Then you had the you know, the other areas of the game, the jobs, the day-to-day jobs in the FAI. I think that was a huge one for us. There's just over 200 people working in the FAI. In the week and the run-up to Christmas, 13 months ago, there was an announcement made that job cuts were inevitable. And that was a really tough time. We went in at the end of January, and you could feel that in the air, that, you know, all the people who had previously felt their jobs are secure and loved working with the FAI, there was a huge fear in the air. And I think that's one of the things that look back on and get the most sort of kick out of, was that we didn't have to go and make those redundancies that people thought were inevitable. And, you know, when you get a workforce that start to appreciate that as well, you feel the thing going the right way. But I never had, I might have had a doubt before I went into the association about how it worked, about the application of the people that work in there. But once I got in behind closed doors, Jared, there's some people in there do some great stuff. And of course, it's never highlighted because of the troubles at the top that we've seen over the last few years.
Well, fingers crossed they'll get the opportunity to become the people that we talk about within the FAI, as opposed to the boardroom battles and the infighting. You guys kept calling for unity. Obviously, that was a loaded thing, because you felt like there wasn't enough unity, and you still see leaks. You still see leaks. It's a very leaky organisation, from the national team all the way to the boardroom. What could potentially fix that into the future? Is that about actually having a shared vision, and then it's harder for people to rail against that because it's an intelligent, well-articulated vision that everybody understands is where football needs to go?
Yeah, I think the role of the CEO is very important, and Jonathan Hill has the job to do that. But I think he's very well placed to be able to carry that off. And I think the game sort of realizes now, I think it's settling back down after the traumatic revelations, obviously, of the John Delaney era, and what that meant for the association, and how confidence had to be restored in key areas, you know, like government, Sport Ireland, the Treasury, if you like, and also the bank, you know, that they feel that there's a confidence in the air. So there was a lot of work to be done to reestablish confidence. And in the first instance, that was kind of tough to do, because people wanted to have a voice, and it was fine when they were sort of public about it. But when there was leaks, you know, if you can imagine, Ger, speaking to a potential sponsor about how great the association is going to be, how great it would be to come in and sponsor us, and then there's a sledgehammer of an article in the paper literally when you come out of the meeting, and they ring you back and say, okay, we'll give you a call if we're interested. You know, that's just a snapshot of some of the things that can happen when we have that sort of disarray, for want of a better word. But I already see it changing for the better, and I think there's some great people all around the game, not just those 200 people I told you who work day to day, but on the edges of the game and of the full-time association, there are great people out around the country that it was difficult to you know, hear them during the pandemic. It's not as if we go around the country and hold meetings and pull the pull the sides together. There was so much just trying to survive, make sure that the confidence was there. I mean, government didn't put any money in for a long time. I think everybody thought they did a deal on the steps of the offices of the Minister for Sport way back 12 months ago. They didn't. They agreed, they signed an MOU, and a lot of work had to be done to get to the point where they would start funding again. And that sort of started to happen around midsummer. So that period of time when we had doubt in the air that the money was actually going to come, and we had to fulfill obligations to the government and to Sport Ireland, trying to pull the game together, that was difficult, because the game was saying, hang on a minute, we need to be treated properly too. So there was obviously going to be obstruction in some ways. But yeah, the leaks are tough to take. You know, you'd question anybody who's sort of giving out these leaks as to their motive. But I think it's eased. I think it appears to have settled, and I think Jonathan Hill has done very well to this point, and I think it's in his hands now to carry that on and make sure that the unity is there. I really hope it is. It'd be great for Irish football. And when you stop and think about it, you know, the constituents were very angry and have a right, you know, I'm sure to have acted the way they have done, and want the best for their particular constituency. You know, it will be achieved better with unity, and I think the right man is in there now to attract that unity.
Yeah, fingers crossed, because obviously football, it's not just good for the Football Association, it's actually good for the health of the country and for participation levels in sport, and it's a million different things as well. Entertainment and escapism, which we all need a little bit of. There was one other thing I just wanted to ask you about before we wrap up. We have James McClean coming on in about half an hour's time, and James has been very public about the issues that he's faced living in England as somebody who is Irish and who has very calmly and rationally explained why he won't wear the poppy. And that kind of story didn't seem to cross over into the mainstream until actually his wife issued a statement and went public with the difficulties that that they now face as the parents of young kids who are beginning, as we all know, your kids will read your phone and they'll read whatever's on the TV, and they're just bundles of curiosity, as they should be. And they're finding out stuff about their dad getting death threats, or somebody saying that they're going to burn their house down. And the FAI have come out and offered support, and finally the PFA have offered support as well. Just interested in your take on this as somebody who has a very close relationship with loads of different clubs and football fans in the UK. Is it getting worse? Is it? Am I wrong about this? That this is actually cresting to a point now where that division, it's more difficult now? I don't know. Is it specifically with James because of his nationalistic identity?
I don't think so. I think it was around in the past, and I'll refer to my own experience of it in a second. But I think social media has really just sort of tsunamied the issue into being, and issues like that. I mean, you know, we saw, you know, racism issues and Ian Wright that he suffered recently playing itself out, and there's a lot of talk that the social media companies have to do more for the type of interaction on social media that I call them bigots or whatever that they do. It's tough, you know. In my day, it was slightly different. There was no social media, but I did get a visit from the chief of Durham Constabulary, who came to tell me that they had an active Combat 18 unit who they had got word were going to target me and the family at home. I didn't have a public audience to go and discuss that with, and thankfully I didn't. We dealt with it behind the scenes, and we were just careful for a little while, and it passed away. So there are things that have happened. There's a small minority of people who cause this issue, but they get such exposure now on social media, and that's why it's so difficult for James and his family. I've heard some argue that he brought it on himself. Well, you know, in fairness to him, he has a right to feel the way he has. His upbringing would tell you that, and he made a point of letting people know. Most people have accepted that and admire him for it, but you still have that few that are making life difficult for him, and I'm delighted to hear that the PFA are coming and standing up to it and coming with support for him. Because
they need to, really, don't they? Like, everybody needs to come forward and say this is completely unacceptable.
Yeah, I think the fact that the platform is there for these people to make inroads and become sort of almost a part of an agenda, it's so attractive for them that, you know, that they take that opportunity, and of course it becomes so much more difficult. I mean, it was easy for me and our family just to take a bit of a gulp and get on with it. Nobody knew about our issue. And then there's other people, lots of other people, Irish people, other foreign people who've come to England who've suffered the same. But just the fact that these people can still get away with it, I do think the social media channels have a lot to answer for in terms of how they veto what people call, the freedom of speech. There's freedom of speech, and there's downright disgraceful behaviour, and I think there should be a distinguish between the two.
Niall, how did the police happen upon your threat at the time? Because at the moment it seems very social media driven.
Yeah, I was approached at the club and was asked would I set a meeting up with the Durham Constabulary. They've asked would I meet them, did I want to go into them, and they actually came to our house. And it was a little bit scary, for them to say, look, we have word that there are people who are setting up at meetings attempting to target Irish people. And I was also in the same parish, living in the same parish as Tony Blair at the time in his constituency. So they kind of factored that in and said, they're trying to make a bit of noise about you, and that there could be, some trouble ahead for you. But I turned down the opportunity to have protection, for want of a better word. And we saw it through. We were very rural, and I did kind of worry a little bit about Gillian and the kids at times who were going away, staying overnight down the far end of the country or whatever. But it passed off, and thankfully nothing happened.
Was this when you were a player at Sunderland?
Yeah, this would have been when I was a player, maybe not doing so well in Sunderland either at the start. But it passed off, and my relationship with people there was just an incredible relationship that was built up after that time. But I suppose in the early days, suppose not everybody. I wasn't everybody's cup of tea. Never mind the bigots from Combat 18. I think the fans in Sunderland weren't quite sure what I was when I came up at the start, but thankfully that all turned around.
Niall, go on. Sorry, Ewan.
Sorry, just one final one. Did that replicate itself in the stands? Like, obviously, this is quite a separate thing to just inside a football stadium. Did you get an anti-Irish sentiment when you were playing? I
think the odd time, I can remember going back to my car late in the dark, one winter Saturday night after a home defeat, and I was struggling with my knee, and I think Aisling was a young child. I was carrying her on my arm, and literally a meatball of a thug walked by and spat right into me, and piss off back to Ireland, Paddy. I mean, I got that, but that was just a one-off instance that an incident that I kind of kept very much to myself for a good period. I didn't want to go promoting that because I'd had a bit of a stinker that day, and obviously this particular guy was annoyed. But football, it really does get emotions flowing, as you know, and there was rage in the air that particular time with this guy, and something I won't forget. But I dealt with it by putting it under the carpet. I really admire James for coming out and taking it on, because it's so much more difficult for him with social media. It's a huge story every time he tries to do something about it, and I as I say, admire him, but I just hope it gets better for him, and please God the PFA will get strong on this. And I know they've a new CEO to vote in soon, but I would like to think that the respect of footballers, be whatever race, religion, creed that they are, that they're prioritised, and that people can see a way out of this, that the social media channels will play their part as well. It's not good, Ger.
No, it absolutely isn't, and it's really something that the social media channels could fix at the touch of a button. The way the betting companies require a passport, you need a passport to do this, and if you don't have one, and we don't know exactly who you are, then you can't get on, and you can't have a second account. You can't.
Correct.
It's a really easy fix if they wanted to fix it, and the politicians could force them to fix it. But yeah, at the moment, there doesn't seem to be the will to do it.
I think so. I think everybody is kind of, just shrugging their shoulders and saying, oh, well, that's life. I think it's having too much of an impact now. It's allowing, a narrative to a strong, prevalent narrative that is an awful example for our young people. Like, what will they think in 5 or 6 years if this is all they hear? What's the norm then? What are we teaching young people to be? Is that what football was meant to be about? No, sport was meant to be about something totally opposite to that. And I would agree with you there. I think that's a very fair point, that, holding people accountable and removing them should they not come up to scratch of course that should happen. This argument for free speech and the masses being able to do what they want, I think we should look at it.
No, great stuff. Thanks a million for joining us this morning.
Thanks,
Cheers.
guys. Pleasure.
That documentary from Bootroom to Boardroom is on Virgin Media 2 tonight at 10:15. It is 8:40 this morning. Really amazing stuff. I hadn't heard any of that before from Niall about the active threat from Combat 18 when he was playing for Sunderland, or indeed the anti-Irish sentiment that he experienced being spat at. It's a pretty grim scenario. We'd love to hear from you this morning. 0879 180 180 is the number. We've had some pretty horrific testimony by email as well of the anti-Irish sentiment, that people just living and going about their business, playing football actually in England. We might read you that email a little bit later on.